On a quiet street in a small European town called Ravenhill, where stone houses lean slightly with age and winter seemed to last longer than it should, a fluffy white cat sat every evening beneath a glowing window. Her name was Snowfur, and her fur was as pale as the frost that clung to the iron fences along the road. She never moved from her spot, no matter how hard the wind cut through the street or how thick the snow piled around her paws. People noticed her, whispered about her, but none truly understood why she waited there so faithfully. Snowfur once lived inside that house, the one with the warm yellow light glowing from the second window on the left. Inside lived Eleanor Whitmore, a gentle old woman with silver hair and trembling hands. Eleanor had found Snowfur years ago during a snowstorm, crying weakly beneath a frozen bench near the town square. Eleanor had wrapped her in a wool scarf and whispered, "You're safe now, little soul." From that moment on, Snowfur belonged to her, and Eleanor belonged to Snowfur. Their life together was quiet and simple. Eleanor read books by the fireplace, and Snowfur slept curled against her feet. In the mornings, Eleanor brewed tea and talked to Snowfur as if she were human, sharing memories of a lifelong past of a husband named Thomas, of children who had moved far away, of laughter that once filled the house. Snowfur listened without judgment, blinking slowly, pressing her head against Eleanor's knee whenever her voice cracked. As years passed, Eleanor grew weaker. Her steps slowed, her hands shook more, and sometimes she forgot where she placed her glasses. Snowfur noticed everything. She followed Eleanor closely, watched her breathing while she slept, and refused to leave her side. On cold nights, Snowfur lay across Eleanor's chest, her small body rising and falling with Eleanor's breath, as if guarding it. One winter evening, Eleanor did not rise from her chair. Snowfur pawed at her gently, meowed softly, then desperately. But Eleanor's eyes stared at the ceiling, unblinking. Snowfur curled against her chest, refusing to move even when strangers came and carried Eleanor away wrapped in white. The house fell silent, colder than it had ever been before. After the funeral, the doors were locked. Eleanor's distant relatives took what they wanted and left the rest. Snowfur was forced outside, confused, frightened, her world shattered. But every night she returned to the house, sitting beneath Eleanor's window, staring up at the place where warmth once lived. She believed Eleanor would come back. She always had. Days turned into weeks. Snowfur grew thin. Her once glorious fur became tangled and dirty. Snow soaked her body, rain clung to her whiskers, but she never left. Some nights, the light in the window flickered on when workers checked the house. Snowfur's heart leapt each time, only to sink again when no familiar footsteps followed. The townspeople began to notice her loyalty. A young baker named Lucas Meyer left scraps of food near the fence. A florist named Amelia Rhodes tried to take her home, but Snowfur hissed and ran back to the window. Her heart belonged to that house and to the woman who would never return. One night, the cold was merciless. Snowfur's body shook uncontrollably. She curled into herself beneath the window, her breath shallow, her eyes heavy. She dreamed of Eleanor's voice calling her name, of warm hands stroking her fur, of sunlight through lace curtains. As dawn approached, Snowfur barely stirred. But fate had not finished writing her story. That morning, a young woman named Clara Whitmore, Eleanor's granddaughter, arrived from another country. She had been unable to attend the funeral, burdened by regret and distance. Standing outside the house, keys shaking in her hand, Clara noticed a white shape beneath the window. She knelt down slowly. "Oh, you must be Snowfur," Clara whispered. The cat lifted her head weakly. Those pale blue-eyes Eleanor had described so many times met Clara's gaze. Snowfur tried to stand, but her legs failed her. Clara gathered her gently into her coat. Snowfur did not resist. For the first time since Eleanor's death, warmth returned. Inside the house, Clara cried as she cleaned Snowfur's fur. As she found Eleanor's old notes mentioning the cat, calling her "my little angel," Clara realized Snowfur wasn't just a pet. She was Eleanor's last companion, her final comfort. Days passed. Snowfur slowly regained strength. She explored the house again, sniffing familiar corners, sleeping in Eleanor's chair. Clara stayed longer than planned. She repaired the house, cooked meals, and talked to Snowfur late into the night, just as Eleanor once had. Eventually, Clara made a decision. She would not sell the house. She would live there. Spring came slowly to Ravenhill. Snow melted, flowers bloomed, and Snowfur sat once again beneath the window, but this time from inside. She watched birds from the sill, her fur clean and glowing, her eyes filled with life. Sometimes at sunset, Snowfur would sit by Eleanor's chair and stare quietly, as if remembering. Clara never disturbed her. She understood that love does not disappear, it changes form. On one warm evening, Clara opened the window and sunlight spilled across the room. Snowfur stretched, purred softly, and climbed into Clara's lap. She was no longer waiting. She was home.